Okay. Does it say it's recording, Gabby? Okay, cool. So yeah, let me start again while we wait for people to join. Just to let you know a bit about the group and how we started the Green Forum. So I'm part of the Student Sustainability Reps at University of Birmingham. We just started in January, so very fresh. And we were hoping to run a kind of event around careers and around sustainability. So we got in touch with West, which is a group at Aston University, Women in Engineering, Science and Technology. And I see Gabby's having a bit of a sorting herself out there. You okay? Great. Yeah, so we got in touch with them because their theme last year was sustainability, and they were hoping to host a sustainability fair last year, but of course coronavirus stopped that. So after a bit of a discussion, we decided to run something together. You know, a big part of the fight against climate change is collaboration, of course. So, you know, what better way than to get like kind of these two unis in Birmingham that are focusing on the same kind of things together. So yes, we hope today in the next few days spark some conversations basically. I'll tell you a bit about what the other days are going to be about at the end. But for now, we're just going to cover sustainability, promoting it through your career. So I'll give it one more minute, 5 past, and then we'll get started introducing everyone. Just check. Nobody else is going to join.
Yeah, it's funny actually how Morgan got in contact with us because she thought that we'd done a sustainability fair, but we never got to do it. It was just a couple of weeks before the lockdown that happened. So we'd already planned out a fair. We were going to have an electric car there. We were going to have all these stalls set up, and we were really excited to put this fair on. And Morgan had seen the promotion for it, and then of course it got cancelled a week before lockdown, I think it was. So it's just really fortunate that she got in contact and we decided, let's do something together then, because we never managed to manifest what we had wanted to do. But I think this is going to be an amazing next couple of days. Really excited to see what everyone has to say about this subject, and sharing some of the ideas and the amazing work that you've all been doing. It's also going to be really nice to hear from students about what ideas they have, and you know how we can really push forward as a workforce into sustainability and focus on that. I think we can get started, Morgan. I think it's
Yes, I think so too. That'd be great. Yeah, so as we've said, oh, there you go, see one more person, perfect timing. Okay, so yeah, so this session's about how you can promote sustainability through your career. So I'm not going to spend too much time introducing the panelists. I'll let you introduce yourselves. So first, let's go to Katie. So this is Katie Jepson from the Students Organising for Sustainability UK. So Katie, if you want to say a few words, please.
Thank you. Thanks so much for inviting us. So yeah, I'm a senior project manager here at Students Organising for Sustainability, SOSUK for short. And my role is to run our Green Impact programme. So Green Impact is around engaging staff and students, not only at universities, but across our NHS trusts and dentists, GPs, museums with sustainability. So no matter what you work as, whether you're a lecturer or you work in a laboratory or whether you work in finance, anybody, as we all know, can do something towards being sustainable. So that's what we engage staff with across all these different organisations. So not only in the UK, but across Europe and Australasia as well. And on top of that, so Students Organising for Sustainability, we're quite new. We were only formed in 2019, but previously we were part of the National Union of Students. So you might have heard of them. Your students' unions or student associations are usually part of the National Union of Students who fight for students' rights. So we were the sustainability team, but back in 2019, when all the youth strikes were happening, we just thought we needed to engage with that kind of like youth body to really go further and faster with our sustainability work. And since then, there's been so many great campaigns and programs which I'll share with you all as we go on, what you can get involved with. And yeah, so our kind of purpose is to get students learning and acting on sustainability. So this was a perfect panel discussion for me to be part of. So I'm looking forward to hearing some of your questions. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Katie. Well, next we'll go to Sally. So Sally Sudworth, she's the Global Head of Climate Change at Mott MacDonald.
Thank you. So hopefully you can see that slide there.
Yeah.
So yeah, passionate about saving the planet, absolutely, and have been throughout my my career. Just move that across, go into presentation mode. There we go. So yeah, how have I promoted sustainability through my role? Well, certainly at the moment, I've been in this post for 3 months, and that's given me the opportunity to set a global strategy for one of the world's biggest consultancies, Mott MacDonald. And what's brilliant is that I'm getting to hear about all sorts of projects that are happening in different regions, and I've been able to put people in touch with each other and to share that brilliant information. So that's been really inspiring. I've loved that. Prior to working at Mott's, I helped to shape the net zero strategy for infrastructure at the Environment Agency, created a thought paper, took that to the board, got a fully resourced program up to date. So putting in place something practical to manage all of the flood and coast and navigation, water resources, fisheries, all of those sorts of structures throughout England. So there's a plan to take us down to net zero. So that was really fascinating, really enjoyed that. And then outside of work, I'm involved in, as a professional engineer, I'm a chartered engineer and chartered environmentalist. I've been involved with the Institution of Civil Engineers working on the Carbon Project. So working with a cohort of like-minded professionals, all determined to make this happen. I've co-founded the Climate Emergency Programme with the Institute of Asset Management, and that particularly looks at the whole life of infrastructure and assets, engineering projects, so that we're making sure that anything we design and construct can be used and operated in a net zero way. And so that you're talking there about Network Rail, National Grid, Highways England, Environment Agency, all the water companies, you know, all of these sort of big asset management owners are all sort of engaged with that program. I also the founder of the Women's Engineering Society, the Climate Emergency Group. I've set up because I wanted to drive this sense of urgency that we have. We're particularly focused on the SDGs, so a really sort of great breadth of understanding that's been shaped by the task groups, and I can say a bit more about that if you're interested. I also go to St Wilfrid's Church, and in Cheshire, I've put together a sustainability plan, which is really simple, just highlighting the things that they can do practically to make a difference in the local village. And also more exciting, working for Engineers for Overseas Development as a director, doing work in sub-Saharan Africa, making some real difference as an engineer in terms of improving the quality of people's lives. And everything we did there sort of was about sustainability at its core. I have got one other slide, but what I'll do is maybe use that to illustrate some of the answers to the questions that will come up. Thank you so much for the chance to share today. I think it's lovely to have a smaller community, have quite a different level of conversation. We can go into things a little bit deeper. Yeah, I really welcome hearing from students today. Thanks.
Thanks so much. So Paige, if you'd like to tell a little bit about yourself. Sorry, I don't want to pronounce your surname wrong. Paige Walzak?
Walzak, yeah. Sorry, I'll just try and share my screen.
So Paige started the Green Lab Initiative at Aston University.
Yeah, can everyone see the slide? Okay, cool. So yeah, I'm a PhD student at Aston University. The whole reason I got into it was because I noticed that there was a real problem with sustainable research. So I work in health and life sciences. So all of our research is in the lab, and it has to be sterile, which is really bad because the amount of plastic you go through in like a day, the amount of electricity you're using, it's just constant. Like the hoods you have to use, the types of freezers we use, like -80 freezers, they take up the same amount of energy in a year as an actual average UK house. So all of this kind of adds up, and when you're in the lab, you're looking around, and you can see from the picture there, I have one small plate, and I've used all of those plastic tips, all of the gloves to do it, all of the electricity to keep the hood going, the incubators, the freezers. So this is how I kind of got into it, because I was looking around the lab thinking, this is just not sustainable at all. And also the way you can kind of engage people at the top is to talk about the expenses and the money cost, not just the environmental cost. So yeah, I have tried to start the ball rolling and think about ways we can make research more sustainable, but it is very difficult because it has to be like, you can't recycle contaminated waste and things like that. So it's quite difficult. But there's a few little things that I've been trying to push for, and these are very specific to research, but I'm also really interested in seeing other people's approaches at like communicating that to others, and even just like things you can do in an office setting. All of it, you can tie everything together. So these are just a few of the things that we've started to look at, like using glassware and reducing and reusing and recycling, and especially the buying low energy alternatives. So you can buy hoods and freezers that use like up to 75% less energy, but do the same job. These are all things we're pushing for, and ultimately it all ties into the sustainable research thing. And that's where even nowadays projects that are coming forward are sustainable projects. So there's a big push in the stuff that I do for non-animal work, but then there's also a push in the projects that are coming after to look at different things like scaling up of meat, so we don't have to rely on farming as much. And it's all very interesting stuff. It's just very early days for research at the moment. So I'm just glad I can kind of come along and hear what everyone else is doing in their careers. It's very exciting.
Thank you, Paige. Finally, we've got Lucy. So Lucy Bird's the Sustainability Projects and Education Officer at the company Change Agents UK. Do you want to tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, thanks, Morgan. Hi, everyone. I'm Lucy. I work for Change Agents UK, which is a charity and a not-for-profit organisation. We've been running for about 25 years in various different iterations. So at the minute, a lot of our work focuses on a few different areas. So just to run through them. We facilitate work placements for young people and recent graduates in sustainability related roles. So that kind of getting your first step in a sustainability career. We also deliver workshops and training and talks and offer learning resources around sort of essential employability skills. So we kind of bridge the two fields of sustainability and professional skills for employment. So all your team working, problem solving, time management, project management, all that stuff. So last year we did some research in collaboration with the EAUC, which is the Environmental Association of Universities and Colleges, to interview a range of business leaders and university staff and recent graduates who'd got work in sustainability, to find out what skills they needed to get a job in sustainability and sort of real skills for the future, for sort of the changing workforce and the changing work landscape. And we've distilled those findings into one of our new courses, which we've got funding to be sort of developing and delivering at the same time. So kind of piloting our first round of Sustainable Futures, which is what the programme's called, where we explore, it's got sort of 3 areas. So we explore sustainability, what it means, how you can bring it into different sectors. Then we look at skills, so bringing in the findings from our research, what skills do you need to work in sustainability and how can you develop them? And then the last session really on jobs and like job application advice, interview technique, CV technique, really drilling down into some of those basic like employability and professional skills. We're part of the Kickstart scheme. I don't know if you've heard of it. It's a government scheme to help young people who are currently on universal credit and at risk of long-term unemployment to get a 6-month work placement. So we've got our own Kickstarter actually at Change Agents, which is brilliant. She's brilliant. and we're helping other companies get kickstarters in sort of sustainability roles, and we offer the training, the kind of employability training for them as well. And then the other aspect of what we do is sort of partnerships and place-based projects, which are changing all the time, and that's something I'm quite heavily involved with. So at the minute we're looking at projects in Rutland in the Midlands, which is where we're based, projects around like ecosystem restoration, working with schools for nature connection, but also nationally we look at sustainability action planning and partner with other youth organisations and sustainability organisations to deliver different things. So that's the kind of broad remit of what we offer, and I'm involved a little bit in all of them.
Thank you very much, Lucy, that's fab. Yeah, so thank you again, all of you, for being here. We really appreciate it, and we're looking forward to getting your insight. I certainly am anyway. So we'll just get started with what the first question we wanted to pose to all of you, which was just kind of basic to get started. What qualifications did you need, you personally, and like what path did you kind of take to get into the role that you're in now? So let's start with Katie, if we start with you, if that's all right.
Yeah, absolutely, thank you. So I don't know how far to go back, but I did geography at university, and in that I did also some volunteering. So I'm very aware that volunteering isn't available for everybody. Like if you have a part-time job, like I know it's not super accessible to everyone, but I found that because geography is so broad a topic, I didn't know exactly what I wanted to really focus in on. And then it was only through like volunteering, whether that was the conservation, or I volunteered as a student on the Green Impact Programme, which I now manage, so it worked out well for me. So it's just helped me like really narrow down and think about what I wanted to do. And then once I graduated, I did an internship with a conservation charity called Groundwork, and that was like working on permaculture farm, but I was still kind of like figuring out exactly what I wanted to do. And then my first job was with a conservation charity, but it wasn't exactly what I wanted to do. It was like putting people on job seekers allowance into work placements. And what I really would say is like, even if you're, you know, the job isn't like super ideal, it was just to get me into like that organization, because I knew that I wanted to work for them, but it wasn't exactly the job that I wanted to do. And then lucky for me that whilst I was there, a job came up within the conservation team, which is what I was interested in. And because I obviously already knew the managers, I was already in there, it was so much easier for me to get like a job doing what I wanted to do. So we would say like, when you're like looking for jobs, is even if it's not exactly what you want to do, if it's with the type of organization that you really want to work with, just go for it. Then once I got this current role, so senior project manager, I then am a practitioner member for the Institute of Environmental Management. So you could become a graduate member. So once you graduate, you can be part of that professional body. And I know that quite a few organizations do look for you to be part of a professional body to like do certain work. So I would encourage you to have a look at that. So to be a practitioner member, you have to do like an exam and everything to prove that you do that you uphold the skills and the knowledge that you need to be a practitioner member. But graduate membership, you can just join it straight away. So they're kind of the qualifications that I needed and what I did to kind of get into the career that I currently am now.
Thanks. So this professional body, so you say if you're a graduate, then you just join as a graduate, and then but then if you want to join like as a official member, and do you pay for this membership?
Yeah, you do. I can't remember what the graduate membership, I know mine was like £130, and then you had to pay to do the exam. But for the graduate member, you don't have to do any examination. It's just like if you're studying like a relevant topic, then you can just join as a professional member. And then they have like webinars and they have networking events. So I know that there is a networking events within the West Midlands that you can go to, that IEMA like host for you to go to if you're a member. So it is good that if you're wanting to network and understand like what you can do within sustainability, yeah, I would encourage you to have a look at it, but aware that there is a cost involved in joining.
Fantastic. And what was it called again, sorry?
It's called IEMA. Thanks, Lucy.
Great, Lucy's fantastic. Okay, thanks very much, Katie. Okay, Sally, do you want to tell us a little bit about, you know, the path?
Yeah, I won't tell you. It'll take over an hour probably if I went into the details of how I got to where I am today. But what maybe you can take heart from the fact that there are careers in sustainability and climate change. The fact that Mott MacDonald have created this global head position where I'm working with the executive board means that they're taking this really seriously. So now is the time to be considering a career in this area because of climate change, the climate emergency. That the timing is perfect, really. I've been working on this agenda for a number of decades. I'm that old, but it's always sort of been on the periphery, and we've always been knocking on people's doors. But now there's real traction. People are getting interested. Everyday businesses are understanding they need to tackle climate change risk as part of their business model. I think whereas before they maybe thought that, oh, climate change, yeah, very interesting, but doesn't really apply to me. But in fact, it would apply to their client base, their supply chain, their premises, their assets, wherever they're located, how they transport goods, all of these things. They're really like ostriches with their heads in the sand if they think it doesn't apply to them. And people are coming around to understand that. So the fact that you've signed in today to find out more about it is really, really positive. So I'd encourage you. Yeah, just as Katie has said, yeah, there are other professional engineering organisations. So I'm a fellow of the Institution of Civil Engineers. I never dreamt I'd be a fellow. I thought just becoming chartered was a bit of an obstacle, but you know, you sort of get there, you plough on, and if you're determined. CIWEM, the Chartered Institute for Water and Environmental Management, IEMA is brilliant. You get a breadth of training if you engage with them. The Institute of Asset Management, just mentioning in the introduction about all of the big asset management owners, and also they have chapters around the world, so you get exposed to things that are happening in other parts of the world as well. And the Women's Engineering Society, because they are a truly multidisciplinary, multi-sector group, and they have different conversations compared to the others. Now, it does cost to join these organisations, but very often your employer will cover the cost of your professional fees. Maybe just one, maybe two, if you can make that business case, probably not more than that. And then, you know, the burden would fall on yourselves, depending on which ones you wanted to commit to. But yeah, don't let that put you off. Graduate members are often for free or at very low cost. And then it's usually your employers that pick up the tab, thankfully. Thank you.
Great, thanks very much, Sally. So Paige, what, yeah.
Yeah, so like I said, I'm a PhD student, so I'm not really like the business side of things. It's definitely more academic. And in that respect, there's never really, unless you do go to like a university level, there's not really a sustainability role specifically. It's really more about what individual changes can you make, or even if you try and go for a project that is specifically sustainable. But then kind of like carrying on what Sally was saying, every business and every institution is recognizing the need for this sustainability aspect now. So in academia, it is a bit different, but I found that it didn't matter what undergraduate or what master's you're doing, because you can always find a way to link that to be more sustainable. Whether it's, for me, biology, using less plastic, or if you're in psychology and you're doing a lot of gathering surveys and stuff just to go paperless. It's like silly things like that. But yeah, there's no real barrier to doing a PhD specifically being sustainable. I think, yeah, I personally did an undergraduate and a master's to get to this level, but I don't think it matters whether you're a PhD student or not. Any position in academia, you can make it more sustainable.
Thanks very much. And Lucy, finally, obviously you've got so much knowledge about generally what qualifications you need to get into sustainable jobs, but I would like to hear, you know, specifically what your path's been. So.
Yeah, cool, of course. So my first degree was actually in dance. So I trained at a school called Rhondda, which is a ballet and contemporary dance school in London. And that's what I did when I was 19. Went and trained there, and then danced and acted and performed and toured. So that was sort of the first industry that I worked in. And I feel like in terms of how that serves me now, that's really, initially when I retrained in sustainability, I thought, you know, how on earth is any of that going to be relevant? But actually, the more I go on working in sustainability and the deeper I get into a lot of these issues, it served me so well in terms of creativity, thinking outside the box, in terms of engaging people and learning the importance of fun that people don't, so often doing more sustainable behaviours is just feels like a less enjoyable version of all the luxuries and all the stuff that people sort of want or aspire to. And actually, I think working in the arts taught me that we need to reframe, we need to have this imagination of what is the world we want to build. Like, let's not just call it sustainability, which starts sounding really boring after a while. Like, what is our vision for a better world? Ultimately, that's what we're working to in sustainability. And that's quite a personal thing. Like, we've all got potentially slightly different things we want to see in the world in future, but you put them all together and you get this really holistic vision of a much more fun, much more beautiful, much more equal world. So definitely working in the arts taught me the importance of fun and visioning and imagination, which is what we need to kind of bring this to lots of different people and get everyone's views kind of on board. Anyway, so then I did some performing for a few years and worked very hard. I guess it taught me hard work as well. And then I went traveling. I did some volunteering in a few different countries in the southern part of Africa. And that opened my eyes to a lot of different social and environmental issues. I had a lot of fun along the way, yes, but it was tough in a lot of ways as well. Working on sort of wildlife conservation reserves and in like disadvantaged communities in Malawi, and doing education and HIV stuff and just all sorts really. And came back and just felt like I needed to do something more to contribute to this better world. I could see all the problems really that I'd kind of had my eyes open to. And because sustainability wasn't taught so much when I was at school, like all these different issues weren't really such a thing like potentially is for the younger generations now. So I went to the Centre for Alternative Technology, which is in Wales. It's like the sustainability sort of hub for the UK, and they offer a whole range of master's programmes, which is expanding all the time. When I was there, they had about 4 different programmes, but they've got a lot more now. And I did a master's in sustainability, which is very broad and covers sort of all different areas from politics and economics to ecosystem restoration and farming and energy and all sorts really. And that was absolutely vital for me in terms of getting a real grounding in how to tackle all these issues, partly on the sort of more practical level, but also on the root cause, at the kind of root cause level. And the last thing, just to pick up on something Katie mentioned, is volunteering. For me, volunteering was really instrumental in me being able to then get my first role, because my previous work experience was all in a slightly less related field. It was all in performance and the arts. So to get my first role in sustainability, I'd done a whole load of volunteering, sort of part-time, like while I was studying and stuff. And I'd co-founded an Incredible Edible project, which is a community food growing project in the local town that I was living in. And I really drew on my experiences in like project management and all different sort of environmental things from that, which helped me then land my first role, paid professional role in sustainability after my master's.
Great, thank you. So a question for both of you really, in terms of volunteering, were you paying an amount to go do this volunteering, or was it a matter of you got there and you look after yourself kind of thing?
So my volunteering was during uni time, obviously doing my uni stuff, but like during university. So it was kind of like through my students' union. So sometimes if I had to go somewhere, they would like pay for that. So I definitely encourage you to have a look at students' union or student association, because they have some loads of charities that they're connected to that you can go and volunteer for. My internship wasn't paid, but they did like pay for my accommodation and my travel, because it was in Malta. So they did pay for that, but yeah, I'm just super aware that that's not accessible to everybody. Like, help to like give your time for free, like, is a privilege. So don't, like, if you can't do volunteering, like, working as your like a part-time job, like all the skills from that, it might not be sustainability, but to be able to say that you've got customer service experience, like you can still like draw. I know like everybody says transferable skills, but that really is something you can draw on. So even if you can't like directly volunteer straight away, like even just being part of environmental groups, so whether that is like joining a professional body or it is I don't know, like there's loads of groups out there, so I'm not going to just pick some, but like just being part of different groups and like, you know, learn about things, so you can bring that to a job interview saying like, I'm really passionate about this, like I might not have the experience, but I'm really passionate about this at the minute. Like, don't dismiss that, like it's still really important.
Yeah, and Lucy?
Yeah, I think, yeah, most of the voluntary stuff I've done in the UK, like I wouldn't pay to do it. I just did what I had time for when I had time for it. And I think that's the joy of a lot of these voluntary groups, is you just, if you've only got like 2 hours every month, then that's enough. And yeah, I mean, I did a range. That's while I was living in Wales. I did quite a bit. I do a bit with the National Trust, volunteering on the, you know, getting some sort of ecosystem management kind of experience, just because that's a skill. It's basically all around like the skills that I wanted and the values I guess I wanted to sort of help within the world. So like on a Saturday once a month, I'd go to a rewilding session in the Cambrian Mountains, which is in Wales. And yeah, I was working or I was studying during the week. So it definitely wasn't instead of having paid work or doing my studies. It was just fitting these things in. And I think like the Incredible Edible thing I did was just a couple of hours every month. I just do what I could. And I got loads of skills from that, both in learning how to sort of grow food organically and build raised beds out of like reclaimed materials, which was just really fun. I made a lot of friends doing it, but also having to run volunteer days, having to run the social media, and having to deliver presentations to like the WI to engage them to run their own bed, just all stuff that I could then talk about in job interviews down the line. But yeah, definitely just fitting it in, volunteering with the food bank, like just fitting it in whenever you can. If there's a cause you're passionate about, a couple of hours a month is plenty. Yeah.
Great. Unless there's anything, Paige and Sally, that you'd like to chip in, then yep.
Yeah, if I might just a minute on the Engineers for Overseas Development, that takes on graduates. So once you're working in a consultancy or with a contracting firm or anybody who's interested in working in the built environment, it's a model whereby a team gets together, they produce a design for a project that's been proposed by a community in sub-Saharan Africa. And then they raise the funds, sometimes by applying for grants through their employers or by doing fundraising activities, fun fundraising activities that they get a lot of enjoyment from. And then they go out and help supervise the construction in country, and they usually sometimes they get unpaid leave, but often are using their annual leave. They go out for just 2 weeks, and then there's a handover for the next couple who go out and supervise the next stage of the construction. And so it's wholly designed so that people haven't got to take a 3 or 6 month secondment out of their job, and it's something that they can do alongside their regular work. The payback is it helps them become chartered. They become back really enthused with the real tangible difference that they can make to the communities in Africa, and that enthusiasm then comes across when they go for their professional interviews. So that's what's in it for them. And it's a model that's worked really well over the last 30 years. It's brilliant.
Great, thanks. Fantastic. Okay, well, the next question, moving on, would be what were the main challenges that you have encountered in promoting positive changes? Yeah, I think, Paige, if we can go to you first, because I imagine kind of being the one voice against the rest of the uni's been interesting for you.
Yeah, like I said, it's very difficult, and the biggest challenges, especially with like research-based things, is that by nature you generate so much waste and you just need so much electricity all the time. And even silly things, like on one of my slides I said you can lower your freezer from a -80 to a -70, and there's lots of research in that to support that it won't affect your samples, it won't affect your cells, that they should stay frozen. But it's very much just the way things are done, and it's the way things have always been done. And me starting as a young woman in the lab saying, oh, you can do this, but then you have, you know, like 20 old men at the top saying, no, well, this is the way it's been done, so we're keeping it like this, it's very hard for you to kind of make those drastic changes. So it is very much, you have to make little changes and kind of get everyone from the ground up to make these little changes. And then hopefully that kind of puts some pressure on the university and the people at the top to make changes and kind of meet you in the middle. But yeah, that's definitely the biggest hurdle I've found, is that this structural change is the biggest problem. You can do individual stuff, but it's changing the rules themselves, which is the problem.
Thank you. Katie?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, Paige. Like, structural change is so difficult when you're just one person, like really trying to champion it. And I think that kind of does get in the way. If you're really trying to drive something, but you've just got that one person, budget holders, like if you're like, I want this like sustainable plastic solution, like glass, like, oh, but it's like 10p more expensive, then they vetoed it straight away. So it's really difficult. But I would talk about challenges, but the one way like we overcome that through our Green Impact Programme is like peer-to-peer engagement. So if you can find an example of someone else who's done this and managed to change it, you know, it really is easier then to go to that person like, well, this has happened, look how much money they've saved, or look at the impact this has had, like why can't we do it too? And like even you think of universities, like they're so driven by how they're perceived externally. So there's a charity called People and Planet that rank universities on their environmental and sustainability performance. So, you know, if your university is really poor, I don't know where Birmingham and Aston are, so maybe have a check. But if your university is
check now.
Yeah, check now. It gives like you as students such a good impetus to be like, well, why aren't you doing anything on this? Like, why are we so poor on this rating? So definitely would encourage you to go have a look at that. And obviously, like, people only change when they're made to change. Like, you think like the plastic bag charges, like, you know, hold my hands up. The only reason I take reusables out with me now because I don't want to have to pay like 15p for a disposable one. So, you know, it is just like we only change when we're like forced to change. I think that's, most people would probably agree with that. And, you know, like it's hard. Like, our world is driven by being unsustainable, by the things that we buy and what we drive and what we do, and we go on holidays and how we perceive to the world. So it is hard to be sustainable, and obviously there's a lot of challenges like within that, but you know, like you can, and I wouldn't be disheartened that we can as like consumers like drive positive change. Like if you're lobbying, or if you're, you know, change a provider, or like you start buying sustainable palm oil, like, you know, consumers see that like you see in the supermarket now, like, the amount of like vegan choices is just like completely gone through the roof, and that's purely because like consumers have changed. So don't be disheartened. Like, we know that we can change and we have to change. But yeah, I think I completely agree with Paige. Like, there's a lot of systematic change that needs to happen.
Thank you. And Sally, you say that, you know, you're now part of, you know, there is a sustainability role in this on this executive committee in your organisation, but, you know, would you say that that's quite a new thing? And do you think that you're there, or they've, you know, created this role because they really want to make the change, or do you still have to kind of push a little bit for them to listen?
No, the exec board, they're definitely converted and committed. We're carbon neutral as an organisation, and that's needed the support from the exec board and from colleagues and employees to achieve that, to create the evidence to support it. Now we're moving to net zero. So the biggest challenge for me is around behaviour change. I'm always trying to think in my comms of what's in it for them, you know, the recipient of my message. So I'm working with a lot of engineers and other professionals who are busy delivering projects. Some think that maybe sustainability is very nice and climate change is very nice, but it doesn't really apply to them. So trying to bring it to life with examples of why they would even give me airtime to listen to the message that I have. And climate change, sort of building in climate resilience and considering climate adaptation and climate mitigation. All of those things are very tangible and things that people can understand. But the sustainability agenda is a bit broader. So, you know, what I've talked about is if you can consider those sustainable outcomes from day one of a project or a development, at planning stage, it can be at little or no extra cost. And what's in it for the client? They might tap into some other investment streams as a result of delivering some sustainable outcomes. So they can improve their position with regards to funding. It might help with stakeholder engagement. So when they go for planning permission, they've got the buy-in from all of the people that they need to make that infrastructure, assets, development to be built. You know, there might be other outcomes that the local community might benefit from in terms of amenity, better health, green spaces, habitat, biodiversity, all sorts of other additionalities that will just make that place better and greener and healthier for everybody involved. So it's finding those practical examples. Otherwise, if I can't do that, people are, it's not because they're not interested, but they're just so busy. They've got their head down delivering, doing, you know, what it is that we've asked them to do as an organization, and for a client, they're under enormous pressure. And so to just give them reasons why they should attend to that. And as an engineer, we can provide all the technology we like. But if we don't persuade people to use that technology as it's intended, we have fantastic systems in place with office buildings, with aircon units and all sorts, and then people open the window or bring in a little plug-in electric heater because they're either too hot or too cold. So it's trying to communicate to people why we've put those arrangements in place and getting them to support it. Yeah, so yeah, behavior change, it's massive.
Thank you very much. And Lucy?
Yeah, I think really just kind of agreeing and echoing with what everyone said. I think the things I was thinking were around what Paige mentioned about systemic change, and just coming up, I find it challenging when I come up against this sort of disbelief that things can be different. And you just want to say, well, of course they can. Everything we do is a choice. All the systems that currently exist have been built by people, and we can change them. We can make them differently. And as has been touched on by Katie and Sally about money and what organisations can and can't sort of afford to do, and what we personally can and can't afford to do, and that comes back to what we value and what the market values, as opposed to sort of ecological or social value, which isn't necessarily built into like the fabric of our economic system at the minute. And communication, which Sally just mentioned, I think just to bring that also into the sort of internal focus. So kind of internal communication when you're working with a company or with a group or some peers or volunteering, whatever it is, that sort of clarity of roles and clarity of communication kind of between you can be either really helpful or kind of hinder you guys getting things done. And I think when I think about this in a whether it's in a business setting or in a voluntary group or whatever it is that you set up or you're doing, I just think of it in terms of unmet needs. So everyone's got different priorities, whether they're the finance department or responsible for procurement or sustainability. Everyone's got their priorities. And what are the needs that they are trying to meet with what they're offering? They're trying to keep the company afloat financially. They're trying to reduce the environmental impact of the company, trying to engage more customers. There's all these different priorities, and it's how you can get them all on the table in a really open way between everyone that's involved, and then talk about how can we meet all of these needs together in a way that ticks all of those boxes. So communication again.
Brilliant, thank you. Yes, all great points. People, please ask any questions that you've got in the chat, if you have any, and we'll kind of open it up to those more general questions, and maybe let some people put their mics on and ask in a moment. But I just have one more question I'd like to ask you all, which is this idea of boycotting unsustainable companies, whether when we're looking for jobs as students, we should be completely disregarding companies that aren't, you know, sustainable enough yet, or at all, or whether we should be, you know, going into the belly of the beast, as they say, and you know, working from within these companies to make them more sustainable. So, Sally, if we could go with you first.
Yeah, I don't think the market is mature enough really to be so harsh as to judge organisations just at the moment. Maybe in 10 years' time it might be different, when we'll be able to measure whether people have actually delivered on their commitments. But organisations are in the process of transition. All of us are trying to get our heads around, what does net zero really look like? How can we make sustainability real? And many organizations are really authentic. Maybe that's the judgment. Try to find out about the organizations you might be applying to find out if they are being authentic or whether they're just paying lip service and greenwashing some of these things. And that for us as an organization, we are walking away from fossil fuels, but we're not walking away from our clients. So we have many oil and gas and energy clients, but what we're doing is supporting them through the transformation to delivering and creating sustainable fuels. That's really important, that we need to bring our expertise as professionals and specialists to be able to facilitate that transition to that more sustainable and net zero world. So in terms of what you know, personal choices, with what you can in terms of goods and services, then you can walk with your feet, can't you? You can look to source more sustainable, eco-friendly products and services, and then those that aren't such, then they're going to go to the wall, aren't they, in the long run? So yeah, you could vote with your feet. Yeah, interesting question. Thank you.
Thanks, Sally. And Katie?
Yeah, 100% agree with Sally's point of greenwashing. Like, there's so many companies out there who'll be saying they're doing amazing work, but you know, when you actually look down to it, what are their policies, procedures, how are they treating their staff? It's just, you know, as an example of this, like H&M have their ethical garment range around like having organic cotton, but then during the pandemic they cancelled loads of orders and those garment workers never got paid. So even though they're coming across as very ethical, when you look down to it, that, you know, there's lots of issues with that type of thing. But I'm just going to put a link in the chat boxes. We actually have a campaign called Candidates for Change. So this is for you as like university or any kind of students looking to get a job, is what can you do? So when you're applying for jobs, the questions that you can ask. So could you ask questions like, what is you as a company are doing to create change? Do you like, what extent do people and planet affect your commercial decisions? Like, these are things that you can ask in your job interviews to really understand if the company is actually, you know, doing things that are ethical or not. And then once you have that job, like, you know, just because like you're working for like potentially an unethical company, like as Sally says, like, you know, the net zero agenda like is really, really taken off at the minute. So it doesn't mean that they have to be purely unethical going forward. So maybe you could look at saying, where are your pensions? So a lot of pensions are invested in, you know, a lot of bad things. So you could ask them, who is my pension with? Like, how can I change that? Maybe looking at who they bank with as well. Like, a lot of our banks still fund the fossil fuel industry. So maybe you could, you know, potentially lobby them to change their banks. Do they have emission targets? And if they don't, maybe you could look at seeing like if they can set one up, we could set up a sustainability committee. So there's lots of things that you can do once you're in an organization to really lobby for change. So I really would encourage you to have a look at that guide, because it's just, and actually Birmingham Uni are one of our 3 pilot universities to pilot this with the workshops and things that we're delivering. So maybe some of you might be part of those workshops, but I would really encourage you to have a look at that, and don't be put off by asking these questions in job interviews, because it shows that you're interested and that's something that you're passionate about. You're not like holding that organisation to account, you're just trying to find out information. So there's definitely some really good questions in there to see if that organisation is just greenwashing or if they are doing some really great work.
Thank you, Katie, that's fab. Lucy?
Yeah, that sounds great, Katie. Thanks for sharing that. Yeah, I think very much to answer your question, I'd say it's very much personal preference, where you feel you want to put your efforts and your energy. So if there's a company that you just really don't want to work for, then don't feel like you have to. Equally, it is possible to have quite a big impact in working for companies that are potentially more unsustainable. In terms of if you imagine working for one of the big oil giants on their sustainability strategy, actually how much of a big impact you might be able to have down the line in terms of like global carbon footprint is pretty massive. What I would say is just whatever you work for, make sure you're working for something rather than against something. So that sounds a bit confusing, but when we work against something, it can feel like everything is an obstacle. We have this like warring mentality. It's like us versus them. It's really polarized, and it can be really draining. It's like things become never enough. Like any little win, it's like it's never enough because you still haven't taken down the giant beast that is whatever it is you're working against. But if you just change that around and think, what am I working for? Like the vision I spoke about earlier, what's the vision of a better world that you are working for? Then every little win that you have along the way is a win, and that nourishes you and it energizes you. So it's like, make sure you've got that kind of positive approach rather than the against negative approach. And that's what will help make your careers like really personally sustainable for you to keep going and keep feeling fueled by it. Yeah.
Thanks, Lucy. Yeah, very positive way of looking at it. I'm often, get caught up in the war, I think, against it. So it's good to hear. Paige?
I'm just kind of like carrying on from what everyone else already said, that I suppose you can make more change from inside the companies than boycotting them in general. But I don't think it has to be as severe as boycotting. It might be that you just find a better alternative and you're not necessarily boycotting that whole company, but you could just let them know, like, I'll be leaving. Like for us, some of the tips we buy, you might just say, we won't be purchasing from you because we know that you're not sustainable, and then take your custom elsewhere. And it's not that you're kind of like demonizing that company, it's just you're pointing out that this is what the customer wants, and without that, we're unable to stay with you any longer.
Yeah, fantastic. Very much. Do any of you have any other points to kind of carry on about that, or anything that you think we've missed, you wish you'd said a little bit earlier?
I'm going to do another little plug for one of our campaigns, but it's called Invest. It's around what we can do as individuals. So we've got like a guide, and I will try and find it on our website, about looking at your own like who you bank with. So there's a lot of like workshops and resources out there to kind of look, for us, like, who do you bank with? Like, is it one of the top 3 banks, and like how unethical they are? And maybe looking at, it's such a big impact that we can have as individuals, like look at our banking and pensions and move that. So I'll put that in the chat box to say, like, maybe that's something you can have a look at to see, like, moving our bank account's so easy now, isn't it? But as us as like individuals, that's something that we can really do to make a change.
Thank you. Great.
And actually, just to follow on from Katie's little plug, we're also doing, so our Sustainable Futures programme that we're kind of piloting at the minute, we've got another cohort running in July, and we've still got some spaces available. So if anyone wants to come, then you're welcome to sign up. It's free because it's a funded programme, and we're just really kind of gathering feedback at this stage to make it really the best that it can be going forwards. So you're very welcome to join. I'll just pop the link in the chat. And just send us a message, email us, phone us, and you can get a place.
Thanks, Lucy. Yeah, I was on the first Sustainable Futures, one of the courses that they did, and it was really great. And it's also, just like this, it's really great to meet some like-minded people. Great. Okay. If there's any questions from anybody, I'll just give you a second if you want to put your mic on, or put a message on the chat. That would be great. Otherwise, I have one last thing to ask you all in the last few minutes. Okay, all right. I think I'll go on then. So basically, the main thing is just, if there was one thing you wanted anyone here to take away from today, then what would it be? So Paige, if we start with you.
I would say, based on kind of my experiences, because I'm really aware that like right now all of you guys are like sustainable powerhouses, and I'm just like one woman who's a researcher, and I'm trying in like little ways. So I think that's what I want to highlight, is that you don't have to have a sustainable career to be sustainable in your career. So there's people like me where inevitably I've chosen a career where I'm never going to be sustainable, and I'm never going to achieve the kind of level that everyone else can, just because in the lab alone I'm going to be using like double or triple the energy output and the plastic output of a normal person. But I can try in little ways, is what I'm trying to say, and if everyone did a little bit, it would all add up. So yeah, that's my inspirational message.
Thank you, Paige. Just quickly, before we go to the rest of you, so Namita's just asked a question about how can we integrate the different fields that there are, like, you know, all of the different fields basically. So agriculture, production of fabrics and things are examples she's given. You know, how can we integrate them to like deliver just one common message for sustainability, would you say? Sally, if I can go to you first for this one, and then if anyone else has got
Yeah, if you go to the SDG framework, so there's 17 SDGs, and I mentioned the WES Climate Emergency Group earlier, and all the conversations, if you try to talk about just one, you end up drawing into the conversation 3 or 4 other SDGs. They're impossible to look at in isolation, which means it's a really effective framework for demonstrating how they're all so interrelated.
Perfect, thank you. Anybody else want to say anything about that?
And I don't like work in the fashion industry, but I know like they kind of outsource a lot of their work. So you know, like the garment workers probably won't be like employed by the people who they're like, it's like contractors. It makes it really difficult to kind of bring everything together under one system. That's not a helpful answer, but I think that's what the challenge is like there's so many different organizations that, you know, a lot of that work's outsourced. It's just really difficult to bring like, say, fabrics production and then like agriculture under one banner, because there'll be so many different organizations who were running that.
Yes, great. And I suppose, you know, like Paige says, you know, academia, and there'll be some things that need to be more wasteful or whatever than others, arguably, you know, for the meantime, I suppose, as well. Okay, so Lucy, anything that you'd like people to take home from today?
I guess I'll just reiterate something I already said about your vision. Just have a think, and it relates to Namita's question actually, like just think about what your vision is for a better future. You don't have to call it sustainability, call it like some really inspiring name for the whatever world. Like get a clear vision in your head of what a better world looks like, and then just identify some aspect of that you could potentially work towards in your life, in your work, or in your personal life, in whatever way that is. And then every little win is a win, and you will you'll feel kind of proud and nourished by the things that you're doing that work towards that vision that you've got, even if you don't see the full fruition of it in your lifetime. Yeah, that's what I would say.
Thank you very much. And Katie?
Yeah, I completely agree with Lucy and Paige. Just that, you know, the things that you can do, like, you know, Paige, you might be one person driving it, but I'm sure you're influencing like a lot of people from the choices that you're making. So it is just, you know, if you do go work for a company that isn't sustainable, you know, if you just do one thing, you're still making a difference to a lot of other people, and that like kind of like ripple effect of the influence that you have will probably be huge. So yeah, just keep on doing whatever you can to try and make that difference.
Thank you. And Sally?
Yeah, the message that everybody has a role. They don't have to be a sustainability manager or a sustainability engineer. Just as Paige was saying, if you can bring that sustainable approach to whatever you're doing, we all need to be on that same journey.
Great.
Thanks.
And just
We did have one more question in the chat. Sorry to say.
I'm sorry, I do have to go. I've got a 2 o'clock meeting, so will you forgive me if I
yes,
if I depart? Thank you
Thanks
ever
so
so much
much,
for the
Sally.
opportunity. Thank you. Bye.
you. Yeah, well, if you guys are okay, we'll just ask this question really quickly. And I suppose it's kind of an optimistic thing to end on. So do you think that the economy will always be, finances will always be the priority for companies and for the governments, of course, or do you think environment might become one of the most important policy areas in the future?
Can I jump in that one? Cool. It's one of my little secret passions is well-being economies. So great question, Ed. I think the economy will always be focused on. Economy is actually from the Greek. The word literally means management of the home. So eco meaning home, and the non bit is management of. So really it's around transitioning to different kinds of economies that basically don't just prioritize market value. So an economy where basically ecological and social value and community value is kind of embedded within that economic system. So if you take a look at some of the examples of like donut economics, Kate Raworth's sort of vision of an economy that meets all the kind of base level of people's human needs, but never goes outside of the ecological boundaries, the planetary boundaries. So that's why it's a donut, it's kind of a ring, got the ecological ceiling and the social foundation. And donut economics is being trialled in like Amsterdam and Berlin and places in America. I think there might be a place or two in the UK that's trying to bring it in. So it's just a different approach to the economic system. So it would be, from my perspective, and the other ladies here might think differently, but it's about transitioning to an economy that embeds ecological and social value as well. So it doesn't become like economy or environment. They become mutually supportive. That'd be my answer.
Brilliant. Yes, thank you, Lucy. And either of you got anything else to add?
Just really quickly, that most countries in the world measure their kind of their growth by gross domestic products of what are we buying, but Bhutan is the only country in the world to measure theirs by gross domestic happiness. So I'd love to see that transition where we're measuring our growth as an economy, as a country, by how happy our populations are rather than how much we buy and sell. And so I think that's a real good example of kind of your question, Ed, like how our country has started to do that and potentially might see other countries taking that approach.
I just wanted to kind of mention, because I spoke to Gabby about this a lot before, about like the concept of intersectionality and how eventually we will get to a place where all of these kinds of issues that are like social issues, environmental issues, economic issues, you have to address all of them with kind of like, it's not going to be a blanket that covers everything, but once you start to tackle these different issues, you'll actually end up with like a better society, a stronger economy at the end of it, because you're no longer exploiting people. There's no longer creating like social division and stuff. It sounds really idealistic, and just to be like, put intersectionality on it, that will fix everything. But kind of having that ideal of addressing all of the problems, not just the environmental ones, you will end up with like a better society at the end of it.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, guys. Yeah, so this actually fits perfectly in with introducing what tomorrow's session is going to be about, which is sustainability and the global community. So we're hoping to chat a bit about circular economy ideas and the idea of you know, how we can globally benefit ourselves and not just, you know, in ways that also benefit the environment, kind of coincidentally almost. Yes, Gabby, have you got anything to say about tomorrow?
We've got someone from the Centre for Alternative Technology that Lucy said that you retrained at today. So we're really looking forward to hearing from Louise Halstrop tomorrow on that, and also learning a bit about some projects in Sub-Saharan Africa that are working towards a more sustainable future for. So thank you.
Great. Yes, well, thank you very much, all three of you, for coming. If you've got any last things to say, then please butt in. But otherwise, I'll just say thanks so much to everybody, all the students, for coming along today and listening. And I hope you've got something out of it. I certainly have. I've been making my own notes, so that's been fab. Please sign up to our mailing list. We'll be sending out like a questionnaire to all of you that have signed up today after the event, so that you can fill that in, and then we'll keep you up to date, you three, about what people say, because like I told you before, kind of we've asked some before and after questions to see what people have learned from today, and yes, if you're around for the rest of the week, so Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, 1 till 2, we've got the rest of the event. Okay, so thank you very much.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Bye now.
Bye.
Morgan, could you save the chat, please?
Yes, I've kind
Hi,
of
Sajid. Hi, Nasa. I'm glad you guys came.
Yeah.
Well, they've just got it in the background. They're not even listening. They're
pull
just
them out there.
showing support. That's really sweet.
Oh no, Saji just sent a chat.
He's probably, yeah, he's doing a course at the same time. Our mic isn't working. Yeah, so good that you came.
Brilliant. Oh, thank you so much, Gabby. I thought that was really great.
Yeah, thanks, Tess. I thought it was a good session too. Oh my gosh, I learned so much. So many. I can't wait to extract some quotes out of that from some of the things.